Operant conditioning is a form of learning where actions are associated with consequences. The behavior becomes more likely to recur if followed by a reinforcer, or less likely to recur if followed by a punisher. We have a couple of categories of reinforcers, which can help increase behavior. Remember, we're reinforcing the behavior. We want it to occur more frequently. Positive reinforcement strengthens a behavior by presenting an enjoyable stimulus immediately after a response. Your book mentions a few examples, such as petting a dog after it comes when called, or paying someone for their work. Other examples might be getting a child a new toy for doing well in class, or cheering for somebody after they make a goal. Negative reinforcement strengthens a response by reducing or removing something negative. For example, taking painkillers to end pain, fastening your seatbelt to end the beeping noise your car makes, or hitting snooze so your alarm will turn off. Please, please don't confuse negative reinforcement for punishment. Negative in this context simply means to take away. Write this down. Negative doesn't automatically mean punishment. When we talk about negative reinforcement, we're talking about removing an aversive event. Negative reinforcement provides relief, and relief is an enjoyable sensation. We also have primary and secondary or conditioned reinforcers. Primary reinforcers are natural reinforcements. We don't have to learn that these are reinforcing. These are things like food or rest. Secondary or conditioned reinforcers are learned. It gets its reinforcing power through its association with a primary reinforcer. So money would be a secondary reinforcer. Money can buy us access to our basic needs like food and shelter. Immediate reinforcement is also more effective than delayed reinforcement when we're training animals. If we delay reinforcement, an animal may not be able to make the connection that the behavior that we want to increase is being rewarded. However, humans can experience delayed reinforcers and have them affect our behavior. For example, most of us get paid bi-weekly instead of right after we finish our work. Okay, so reinforcement increases our behavior. Punishment does the opposite. A punisher is any consequence that decreases the frequency of the preceding behavior. We have both negative and positive punishment. Negative punishment is when we remove an enjoyable experience so that unwanted behavior decreases. Think about when you got in trouble as a teen. You may have broken curfew, got a bad grade, or you picked a fight with your sibling. To punish you, your parents may have taken away something that you find enjoyable, such as your phone, your car, or your ability to see your friends. These are all examples of negative punishments. If you say something inappropriate, you may receive negative punishment from your peers by being invited to events less frequently, or having your social interactions limited. Positive punishment is when we administer an aversive stimulus. A classic and controversial example of this is spanking a child for misbehaving. You also might get a ticket if you're caught speeding. To stop yourself from biting your nails, you might apply a polish that makes your nails taste bitter when you taste them. Okay, so when I present you guys with a scenario, I want you to be able to identify what type of operant conditioning is being used. To help you with this, I made this flowchart. So let's start with an easy example. You want to get your roommate to stop eating your food. To get them to stop eating your food, you decide to put a ton of hot sauce in all of your leftovers. Your roommate hates hot sauce. Okay, so the first step is to determine whether we want this behavior to decrease or increase. I'm guessing that you probably want your roommate to stop eating your food, so we want this behavior to decrease. Okay, so that leaves us with the left-hand side of the chart. Now, did we add an aversive stimulus? Yes. We know that your roommate hates hot sauce. Hot foods are not enjoyable for your roommate. Therefore, we can determine that hot sauce is aversive to your roommate, and we can determine that this is an example of positive punishment. Okay, let's try a trickier one. Let's use the same scenario, but tweak it just a bit. To get your roommate to stop eating your food, you decide to stop buying the type of food that your roommate likes. Instead, you buy food that you like, but your roommate isn't a fan of. Okay, so we still want the behavior of eating your food to decrease. So we know we're still working with the left-hand side of this chart. Next, we need to ask ourselves, did we add an aversive stimulus? No. It may seem like we did because we're buying food that your roommate doesn't like. However, I want you to really think about this. Yes, our friend doesn't like our new food choices, but what we really did is we took away the food they like. We aren't buying the new food to punish our friend. We still have to nourish ourselves. The punishment is not that we stored a new food in our house. The punishment is that we removed an enjoyable stimulus. Therefore, we are using negative punishment to decrease our roommate's behavior. I think negative punishment can be one of the most difficult concepts to understand. Just remember, if we remove an enjoyable stimulus, then that is negative punishment. I highly encourage you to use this flowchart if you struggle with operant conditioning. Just remember, if we add anything to a scenario, that's considered positive. If we remove anything from a scenario, that's considered negative. If we want to increase behavior, then we use reinforcement. If we want to decrease behavior, then we use punishment. Okay, this is another figure that might help you decide what type of operant conditioning is being used. So, you determine if we're adding something like a treat or a parking ticket. You also need to determine if you're trying to increase the behavior. If both the answers to these were yes, then you can conclude that positive reinforcement is being used. Reinforcement schedules vary. With continuous reinforcement, learning occurs rapidly because we're rewarding every time we exhibit the desired behavior. But this rarely occurs in real life. It also is more prone to extinction. Intermittent or partial reinforcement is more common. This is when our responses are sometimes reinforced and sometimes not. Learning is slower, but it's more resistant to extinction. When it comes to intermittent reinforcement, we have 4 main ways of implementation. The first is fixed ratio schedule. After a set number of responses, the behavior gets rewarded. Your favorite coffee shop might use a fixed ratio reinforcement schedule to get you to stay loyal to them. After your 10th cup of coffee, they might give you one for free. A variable ratio schedule provides reinforcers after an unpredictable number of responses. Slot machines use a variable ratio schedule. Fixed interval schedules reinforce the first response after a fixed period of time. For example, T-Mobile offers T-Mobile Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, the app has some kind of special reward like a free umbrella or a lunchbox if you visit T-Mobile. Sometimes it's other stuff like a free Redbox rental. Anyway, every Tuesday, T-Mobile customers can expect a reward. Variable interval schedule reinforces the first response after varying time intervals. When you're texting your crush, you don't know how soon they'll text you back. But when they do, the text message is a reward. Responses tend to be better when we use a ratio schedule instead of an interval schedule. But responding is more consistent when reinforcement is unpredictable than when it's predictable. We can see operant conditioning being used in the classroom. Students get feedback on their assignments or quizzes, letting them know how they did. If they did well, they may continue to put in the same effort and use the same studying techniques that earned them the reward. If they do poorly, then they may do less of the behaviors that hindered them from getting good grades and attempt to change their study habit. At work, management may reinforce good behaviors by praising people for their good work or giving them bonuses. We also use operant conditioning in our own lives to change our behaviors. To reinforce desired behaviors, you might do things like set realistic goals, decide how, when, and where you're going to work towards your goal, You would then monitor your behavior and see how it changes. And if you're seeing more of the behavior that you're desiring, then you should reward yourself. After a while, you can gradually decrease your rewards so that you aren't treating yourself too much.